Myself changing through the influences of my environment, that being the plagal cadence that I play, like like F major going to C major, which is, and also just F major to C major, and then that first change happening where I play, and then that theme changes slightly because of the influence of that other motive happening, and then it's like me, and then it's change, and then it's a different version of me, and then it's another change, and then it's a different version of me, and then it just explores that ebb and flow of an individual in an environment that changes them. My parents, before my 11th birthday, they were like, spoiler alert, we're gonna give you an instrument on your 11th birthday. You get to choose what it is, but you have to be cultured and you have to know music, so you decide what it is. And I was like, oh, and I'm like 10.9 years old. So I'm like, oh, like I gotta play the guitar because then I'll be super cool. So I'm like, yeah, sure, I'll play the guitar. So they give me this acoustic guitar and I pretend to be really surprised. I'm like, I had no idea you guys are giving me this. Well, I had listened to Eruption by like Van Halen, like listening to Eddie Van Halen and like do that stuff, and it sounds so cheesy, but just like when I first listened to it, I was like 10 probably. It was just like this mushroom cloud of sound. It was amazing, and I was just like, oh my god, like this is so much more than anything I've ever like really heard or felt before. Like this is crazy. And then I pick up the guitar, and that was like a big part of why I wanted to learn too. Not like I went into like the tapping or anything right away. Like my teacher made me just do a bunch of classical stuff, but it was more just like my need to just figure out how it worked. Like I just picked it up, and I was just like, I just want to like really know how this works. Like I just want to know every little thing, and my teacher would just hand me like all this sheet music. One thing was like I was taught how to read music like almost immediately after being given the instrument, and my teacher would just give me all this music, and I would just like all I would want to do is just figure it out and then just like play it perfectly just for the sake of like knowing it better and better and better, and not even really thinking like it like didn't start where I listened to a record and I was like, I need to sound like that. It was like it was almost given to me, and then I was just like, I just need to figure this out. Like I need to figure out how this works in every little way. So I would put like hours and hours into playing with wrong technique, and that got like honestly like that got me just good enough to like get to USC with a scholarship where I could afford it, which I'm grateful for. And then when Scott told me the right way to play the guitar in the right way, or not even like the right way, but it resonated with me, like it worked for me, like the way that Scott told me he viewed the guitar just worked for me, and I almost didn't. I was like, great, like this is great, I'm not gonna question it. It was like my work, like the hours that I put in had such a greater return. It was like digging with like a spoon versus digging with a shovel. It was crazy. That needs to be your foundation. You have to think like, what am I saying? And then everything else needs to support that. And you have to think about it like that, or else you're just going to come up with a bunch of music that only sounds like the way that it sounds, and that's it. It doesn't sound like anything that you can feel, and it doesn't sound like anything that's worth being remembered at all. And yeah, basically with the third movement, I really thought about integrating the physical way that I view the guitar that I think hasn't been done really on the classical guitar, and putting that into the emotional side of it. Yeah. Oh yeah, like the atheism in schools. Yeah, it's crazy because you're totally right. Like religion being mixed into the culture is like way bigger in the U.S. But my experience was actually really funny. It was the almost exact opposite, because when I was in middle school, I went to just like a public middle school in a suburb of Chicago, and then when I decided I wanted to do something musical, like I wanted to play the guitar. Technically, I actually wanted to go for musical theater at the time, but then I almost immediately changed to just guitar. I went to this arts high school in downtown Chicago, and this is like no one you would meet in an American public high school at all. Like everyone is like, and me being like, how old are you? Like 12 or 13? I was just a little like chubby dude who just like walked in, and I was like, oh, I'm from like the suburbs, and there's people like with hair 1,000 colors and like these giant like hats talking about like how they're discovering all these like crazy parts of their sexuality and like all this stuff. And I was like, oh, like I think I kissed a girl once, and it was funny, and like that's all I and all these people were talking about like, yeah, like I'm an atheist and I'm like subscribed to like this belief about this and this belief about that, and all this like incredibly just like progressive, but also like everyone was still 14, so no one really had any idea like what they were talking about. Like everyone was just going through their own identity crisis, like really. So